Hey cats, it's your footwear friend Ed Midsole Ski here. Today a 100-mile review on a shoe that I bought with my own cash but kind of forgot about. But it's a mighty model you should be aware of. The Rocket X2. It's light, it's nimble, with hints of that recently released HOKA Mach X2. Is this the race rocket that we all want from HOKA? Let's find out. Thanks for tuning in, people. It is always appreciated. Do remember to hit that subscribe button if you've not done so already. Also give this video a thumbs up like. Drop us a comment as well to help fight the YouTube algorithm. Dankeschön. Just a quick recap on the stats of this shoe from HOKA. It's one that I've bought with my own cash. HOKA don't send me any shoes, okay? But all the HOKA shoes I've ever reviewed have bought with my own cash. After a good pummeling, I've now got 40 mil of heel stack here. So on my initial review, I had about 43, so it's definitely lost a little bit of stack there. 36 millimeters up front, so we got about a 6 mil drop here. That seems to keep cropping up on shoes that I really enjoy running in. Either a 5 or 6 mil drop is heaven. About 11.2 centimeters in the widest point of the forefoot and about 9.2 centimeters back here in the heel. So it makes for a nice kind of balance there. It's not too wide, doesn't feel like one of those big boats on your foot. I think these cost me about £165 when I first picked them up just after release. I think at retail they're about $2.19. And I think they're still releasing new pairs of these, new colorways and stuff, so it's still a current model. The foam in the midsole here is very soft. It's coming in at a Shore A24, one of the softest foams I've reviewed on the channel. So hit the 100-mile mark here, 160 kilometers. How has the upper held up over time? There's some slight degradation here to some of the overlays. They seem to have cracked and they're starting to peel off a little bit, but the main HOKA one's okay. There's no tears, no issues really whatsoever with the upper material. The mesh is looking great. Gave it a quick spruce up with the old non-fragranced baby wipes. That's my top tip for you, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to give your shoes a quick clean. It doesn't really look like a shoe that's done 100 miles at all, really. Some pretty bad weather as well that I've run in these shoes. I find the upper fit here absolutely spot on. HOKA shoes these days seem to be a little bit more true to size for me, at least in 2023 and 2024. I used to always have to go up like a half size in HOKAs, but not since this model. This one is the model where things changed. I do like the neoprene sort of tongue here. There is some gusting on it and it stays put. I've never had any issues with that. Good grip around the foot, very similar to that Mach X2 that I tried recently. Laces are a tad long now, those sort of stretchy ones. I'm not a big fan of them. In fact, I think that's probably the worst bit of the upper. You definitely need to trim them back a little bit if you want to use this as an out-and-out race shoe. Otherwise, you've got loads of extra lace. You've just got nothing to do with it, really. I like the width and the height of the toe box here. It's a good fit. I don't think it's anything like the Vaporfly 3. That was very roomy for me. I find I can get a good lock around the front of the foot here, which I couldn't do in the Adios Pro 3 due to those pesky lace loops. I do love the fact the upper on this one dries out really quickly. I ran this morning in it in some terrible weather. It was really wet and the shoes dried off over a few hours and it's absolutely fine. I could go out in it again right now. I'm not going to do that because it's nasty out there. Threshold session actually earlier on, it was one of those where you got to get out of bed and go and do it, and I kind of did it. 2 by 16 minutes at threshold effort with a 10-minute warm-up, 5 minutes recovery in between the two intervals. The Rocket X was really comfortable on that run today. Bit of a thicker sock. It's more race fit, this one. The heel and ankle collar, very similar to that Mach X2. It's very floppy and flexible back here. I find that it just gets any irritation away from my foot there. You can get a good lockdown and then just sort of forget about it. It's kind of one of those uppers. Nice engaging fit and one of the best uppers on a race shoe of recent time for me. I'm going to give the Rocket X2 a 2.8 out of 3 for the upper after 100 miles. Midsole wise, I found the Rocket X2 to be a very fun option. Midsole material is actually pretty durable considering how soft it is. There is one slight area where I seem to have caught it on something here, but the paint layers kind of protected it. It doesn't get all sort of nasty and elephant-like as Zoom X does. It does seem to have a slightly thicker paint layer on it, but at no point have I sort of torn into it by any stretch. And over the course of time, I think the shoe's actually improved a little bit rather than getting more dull or sort of less compressive. I think the PIBA-based formula that we've got here in the midsole on the Rocket X2 is a little bit closer to what we had with the original Zoom X. Slightly hollower sort of squash with that one than like those compressed pellets that you get on something like the Saucony Endorphin Pro or Speed series. Certainly a race version of that Mach X2. That's kind of what brought me back to this shoe again, really, to dig it out and get it up to 100 miles. It's like they've tried to make a trainer with the Mach X2 to go alongside this one. I think that works really well if you wanted a rotation. There's even elements really here of the Silo X1 as well in that shoe, so the three go together in a trilogy. Midsole certainly seems to stay out of the way with my stride. It does kind of goad me into increasing my stride length, actually. I think that's partly due to the drop. It's certainly not a shoe where I really increase my cadence that much. Seems to fit really well into that 10k half marathon bracket for me. I'm not sure it would be a shoe that I'd go for the full marathon distance. And again, I'm not sure I'd go with it for a 5k either. It just seems to sort of sit in that 10 or half marathon bracket. I think the Silo X1 actually would be a better marathon shoe for me. Extended stack there and a more substantial upper, but the Rocket X2 remains one of my faves. I really like the original version of this shoe as well. I can remember having some very fun, very cold runs actually a few years ago in that one. And again, it's a midsole here that's just been overlooked in the world of like Vaporfly 3s and Adios Pros. It's one that people just keep sort of stepping over. I found the midsole felt good at pretty much any pace really, but it does shine at certain speeds where you're putting a little more effort in. I think for me it was probably around about 6:30 to 7:30 per mile. I'll give it a 2.8 out of 3 for the midsole at 100 miles. Outsole, that was kind of where I was a little bit worried initially with the Rocket X2, but all my doubts were sort of quashed really in wet conditions. In fact, it's performed really well recent time. Really strong grip, great traction on some turns and cornering. Now there are some thinner, shallow ridges here, but the rubber again is that sort of more sticky stuff that HOKA's been using over the past couple of years. It's a really big upgrade on some of their older models. I mean, when you look at a shoe like this and compare it up to like the Carbon X or the Carbon X2, there's no comparison. This is like way better. Sticky to the touch, and it's distributed in all the key places here. There is a little bit of relief that adds a little bit more of a trampoline-like effect, certainly up here in the mid to forefoot area. And of course you've got a lot of weight relief here with some exposed midsole and that carbon plate too. There's a nice compressive squash in this sort of area of the shoe. Very reminiscent of the original Nova Blast from Asics. I've only got a tiny little bit of wear here on the lateral side of the heel. Pretty much no wear whatsoever up front there in the forefoot. The other thing I like about this big cutout, it's super easy to clean it. I've never got anything stuck in here like rocks and all that type of debris, but it's super easy to actually get into the crevices here and clean any debris out. Kind of bonus really of having a really big cutout as opposed to one that's sort of thinner and more difficult to get to. Little to dislike here. I shall up my score a little bit on the outsole to a 2.9. Almost nowhere after this mileage is really quite summy. Value wise, well, price is a wee bit higher still than the Deviate Nitro Elite 3 from Puma. That is a banger of a shoe, and to get it sub £200 I think is a really good idea. Around about the same price as the Metaspeed Sky Paris, not quite up there though with that Asics shoe for me. Though the HOKA does provide some really good durability over time, which the Asics didn't have. The Metaspeed Sky Paris just lost a little bit of pop and excitement over the time. This one feels just as good after 100 miles as it did right at the start. And it's looking good as well at 100 miles. So I suppose if you want a super durable super shoe, then yeah, give this one a go. But it might just not have that super big bang for the bucks that you desire on step in. Don't think it's like a 5k blaster for me, so perhaps the versatility isn't quite there. Certainly a more subtle offering here from HOKA, and aside from the overlay disintegration here at the back, I think it's held up pretty well. Good design, good long-term sort of usability, and it's a good quality shoe as well. There's literally no areas that I'm worried about at all. I think it'll soldier on for ages yet. I'd give it a 2.7 out of 3 for value, just lowered a bit in terms of versatility. Okay, if I've totaled the scores up correctly for the Rocket X2, after 100 miles, it's an 11.2 out of 12. Bit of an overlooked model here from HOKA. I reckon it's worth a go if you can pick it up on discount somewhere. Carbon plated super shoe, nice and fun and nimble. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the Rocket X2 and my review down in the comments. Before we get to the musical interlude, just a quick rundown on a load of reviews that are coming very soon. We got the Brooks Ghost Max 2 here. We're about the same weight, if I'm not mistaken, as the Glycerin Max. So it'll be quite the comparison there to make, see which one actually turns out to be the better shoe. Also got this one from Normal. I believe it's supposed to be like the new normal and normal, and it appears to be like a more minimalist sort of trail shoe. Nice to have something with Vibram on the outsole. I'll tell you what, that stuff is sticky. Bit of a lower stack, and this one's super light as well, so be interesting to test this out on some sort of mixed road to trail type application. There's a whole load of other stuff, so if you're wondering whether you should subscribe, then yeah, you should. Do it now. Very quick musical interlude for you. I've been back listening to Paul Weller's album Stanley Road. Magic sound on this one, very natural, very open. Brilliant guitar sounds too. Really love the riff on this one, very infectious. And I like the fact that they switch up some of the drums and percussion later in the track and then sort of toy around with the riff a little bit, make it a little bit more kind of up and kind of hopeful, but then bring it back down again. Brilliant guitar playing here. There's loads of cool little licks just thrown in between the lyrics, and I gotta love the strange Paul Weller sound effects that he used to stick in on some of these tracks in the early 90s. Always fun and exciting to listen to. Go and check it out, people. The Changing Man from Paul Weller on the Stanley Road album. Thanks for tuning in, people. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like. Drop us a comment as well to help fight the algorithm. My name's Eddbud, and I'll be seeing you